What am I saying again?
This is MPW.
MPW.
The podcast.
With your host,
Xylo Aria. Cool.
A podcast about music production
for the everyday musician,
where we learn from experienced studio engineers and each other.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the MPW Podcast. I'm your host, Xylo Aria, and today we have the amazing Ramera Abraham on our podcast.
Woohoo!
So Ramera is an assistant engineer at Metropilos Studios. She has assisted on projects including with Andrew Lloyd Webber, Little Mix, and Nick Cave, and so many more. So really great to have you with us today, Ramera. How are you going?
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I'm doing well. It's good to be back in touch, and I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. So you said you're kind of juggling a few different things. So what's going on in your world at the moment?
Oh, well, aside from assisting at Metropolis, which takes up the majority of my time, I have started my own artist project, which I've kind of neglected for a little while, but it's coming to the forefront a little bit now as I'm trying to make more time for it. We all need some more time to be creative, and I'm working with a few other artists doing vocal production on some EPs and albums for them as well. So just trying to juggle those bits and pieces.
Yeah, always. I feel like sometimes your own personal projects always fall on the back burner.
Always.
Just like, no. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. So today we are talking about being a runner, which is where you sort of started your studio journey. And I have lots of questions for you on that. But I'd love to hear a bit more just about your your path into where you are today. So if you want to tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. I feel like I say this in every interview or podcast. I come from a very, very musical family. So I grew up playing in, the family band, and we were singing all the time together, and I just grew up harmonizing with the adults around me. And I did classical piano and voice from a young age. I did my grade 8, and I also played drums in a few bands after realizing that maybe I needed a little to get my anger out a little bit or something. I don't know. But drums ended up being my calling for a while.
Wow.
But I always kind of knew that I would be delving into music a little bit more deeply as I got older. So when I did my bachelor's degree in Canada, I eventually did it in music performance and law, initially thinking that I wanted to be in intellectual property. But I went to London just to visit some friends that one summer, and I visited Abbey Road Studios, as you do, took my crosswalk photo, and then I realized that Abbey Road have an institute where they teach music production, songwriting, sound engineering. So I thought there was no harm in applying, and so I applied, got in, and the rest is history.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's really interesting. And starting with music performance and law, and then kind of getting into production.
Mm-hmm. I was trying to find my footing in the music industry, really.
That's really cool. And your family, oh my God, they sound amazing. Like, how cool is that? Just grow up learning how to harmonize with the rest of your family. That's
true.
That's amazing.
I'm very blessed.
That's really cool. So yeah, you started in the studio as a runner at Metropolis Studios,
Mm-hmm.
which is beautiful and just such an incredible sort of facility to be working at. So tell me a bit about what is the job of a runner? Can you define that for me?
Okay. I feel like being a runner is not only exclusive to the music industry. You have runners in film and TV, etc. as well. But a runner is the first rung, and I'm using quotation marks, of a traditional recording studio career ladder. It's the initial role you sort of take on when you decide that you want to get into the recording industry, typically with the aim of becoming an engineer. You are tasked with making everyone's life in the studio easier. So you become an assistant to the assistant engineers, you're a little helper for the sound engineers, and you have to run around for different clients and such.
Okay, cool. Are there any sort of specific skills that you would say are good to have when you're a runner, or is it just kind of like anything and everything?
Well, you have to do things quickly and efficiently. It is quite a fast-paced environment, and I might I'll probably touch on that later on too. It's such a useful skill to have. I would say you sort of have to endeavor to get along with a lot of the people that you work with. Typically, you wouldn't be the only runner in a big studio, for example. So you might have a few runners with you. And it requires quite a bit of teamwork to do big jobs together around a studio. So I think the ability to collaborate is also important. And the ability to just take instruction and constructive criticism, really.
So you studied at Abbey Road Institute, and then you started working at Metropolis. So two things there. Would you say that learning production is sort of a prerequisite to getting a position as a runner, or do you know people that just kind of did it without that?
There are, I think, typically more in the past. I think only in the last decade we've really seen this rise of runners in small and big studios who have a higher education, and it would be in something very specific like production and engineering. So you can have your runners that already have their engineering degrees, like myself and a couple of the other guys that I was runners with. But yeah, I think probably 20 years ago, you didn't have that. A lot of runners kind of came in without a lot of previous experience, I feel, and kind of work towards being an assistant or an engineer, again, learning whilst on the job, very hands-on role. I feel like it's less of it might be more of a prerequisite now, but not always. It's not always the case.
Okay, cool. And how did the opportunity at Metropolis come about?
So it's a bit of a funny story. So while I did kind of start at Metropolis, I didn't start working for Metropolis as a runner initially. So I worked in the building for a third-party company, Spotify, who had a studio there. And I was their resident engineer for 6 months. But I was in the building, getting to know the people in the office, making friends with the runners and the assistants that were there. And I always, even when I started with Spotify, I knew that my goal was going to be assisting at Metropolis. So I set my intention, if you will. And I think that's a really important thing to do for anyone that wants to meet any sort of goal. And I sort of, again, endeavored to get on really well with the people that were in the office and make known to them that upon the expiration of my contract with Spotify, being an assistant engineer there was my next challenge and something I'd really like to do. When I was at Spotify, I wasn't doing a lot of work with bands, and we didn't have a big console, whereas Metropolis did, and my work with consoles was very limited, so I wanted to expand on that. And again, I kind of wanted to accept the challenge and learn a bit more about that, and especially from those engineers that work at Metropolis, Liam, Paul, and Alex. I knew there was a lot to learn from them specifically, so I guess all I did was set a meeting up and asked.
I love that.
And I was very scared, though. It took me a couple of months to get the courage to actually ask if I could. Well, I think I initially started to ask about assisting, but the response was that it was important for me to be a runner for a while first and get to know the building a little bit more as a runner, not just someone that knows the staff in the building. But it's important because as a runner, you really get to know how the building works and you kind of become the heartbeat of the studio. And it's so important. I appreciate my running experience now because it taught me so much more about the studio, things that I probably wouldn't have otherwise known if I had just started assisting right off the bat.
What would you say some of those things are?
Every studio has different ways of operating, and it just takes a while to wrap your head around how every room works. So as simple as knowing where things are located in the building, like where do we keep the clothing racks, or someone wants an iron, like, oh, I don't know where to find that. But if you're a runner, you know exactly where it is and you can just go get it quickly. What an obscure example.
Yeah, tell me when you would need an iron.
We get a lot of film sessions at the studio as well, especially now with COVID. A lot of live streamed events. So when we have like a wardrobe department coming in, they usually request an iron.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
And it's also just knowing where things are in the building, and most importantly, knowing how other staff, particularly the engineers, like to have their things organized. You know, it's very particular. I have to put the music stands in a certain way, the mic stands in a certain way. They can't just be strewn all over the place. Everything has its home in the studio, and you know, things get misplaced by assistants who are running around setting up for sessions. Again, we're coming back to that fast-paced environment where you have to be very quick on your feet. As a runner, you learn how those things go, I guess. You learn where everything goes. You might get ridiculed if it's not done properly. But as an assistant, again, you will appreciate and know where those things go. It just makes your life 10 times easier.
Yeah, right.
Hi, my name is Neve Sygrove. I'm from Leicester in the United Kingdom, and this episode is brought to you by MPW Membership. Did you know that all MPW members get the first invites to our free classes, as well as the early bird discounts to attend our courses? This is a great way to make sure you don't miss any of our free classes or courses when you're trying to bring your music to the next level. This is a free feature for all MPW members. Take advantage of this awesome function and so many more using the link musicproductionforwomen.com/membership.
Would you say that's kind of helped you to work out when you go from a runner to an assistant to, maybe an engineer, how you would like things set up for yourself, for example?
Definitely. It definitely prepares you for the pace of a recording session. I don't really think anything ever truly prepares you for like a recording studio experience except being in the studio and doing it. But as a runner, again, you have to do things quickly and on short notice. When you move into an assistant role, that mindset never leaves you. If you get your mic signal and it's not working anymore, you have to work quickly to figure out what could be the problem. You can't kind of stand by idly while someone else does it. It's high pressure, but that's what being a runner kind of prepares you for, the pressure of it all. And it truly is the first step, I think, anyway.
Right. Okay. On that, you said if a mic signal kind of stops working, whose job is it to fix that actually
Mine.
in the studio?
It's mine.
Oh, okay. So it's the assistant engineer.
It's the assistant, yeah. Well, yeah, you can have help, because the engineer will tell you, if he's looking at Pro Tools, he or she, they'll just say, kick drum 1 not working. I'm not seeing it. What's happened? And you, with experience, you kind of get to know what it most likely is. Could be a patch cable most of the time, or, very rarely is it actually the microphone. You have to follow the signal flow of it. But, the artist could actually be in the booth already, and this could happen. And that has happened. That's definitely happened. So, again, high pressure environment. But with more and more experience, you kind of learn to either calm yourself down, or you just know what it could be if you know the mic, if you know the room well enough.
Okay. And so as a runner, would you be working across like all the different studios within, the main studio, or are there like only certain rooms that you'd be kind of assigned to, or how does that work?
So you do have to do things in all of the rooms. Typically, and I don't know what it's like outside of Metropolis, but I assume it's probably very similar. Before each session starts, you have to make sure that there's fresh water in there, everything is clean. There is a rider if the artist has requested one, cutlery, plates, stationery for the engineer to use. A lot of the job is also cleaning outboard gear, making sure the console is clean. There are no recall marks on the outboard. Nothing is dusty. You just have to be there for anyone who needs your help. So if the session is starting at 8 a.m., you kind of have to make sure that studio is done first. And then if you have a session that starts at 2 p.m. in a different studio, then you can kind of afford to maybe do that one last. But, we would kind of do it on a rolling basis throughout the day. So you do get to work across all the studios. But of course, once the session starts, you're out of the room and doing other jobs that you're tasked with.
Okay. So when you're a runner, you wouldn't often be in the sessions?
No. So runners, typically not, unless the assistant needs your help in the room, unless someone has asked you to be there, really.
Okay. And you said you, very bravely asked for a job in Metropolis, which is awesome. And I feel like so many people don't take that step of just asking, but it can be a scary step to take. And would you say there's, other ways to do it, or are there sort of formal ways that other people do it, or is there a process that you know of in sort of the bigger studios?
I wouldn't say there's a set process, if I'm being honest. I think that one of the most tried and true ways to get into a studio is to just email them. attend networking events where you might meet somebody that is associated with that studio. Someone that might be speaking as a mentor or hosting a guest lecture as part of like Normal Not Novelty, for example, or any of those other events around wherever you are. And the real task is to kind of use your existing connections to help loop you in with other people in the industry who would be able to recommend you to someone in those bigger studios. Or, it does help to email. That's how I got a lot of my interviews in the past. But the thing that really helped to me was having someone vouch for me, really.
And who was that? Was that someone that you knew beforehand, or someone that you met networking, or?
It was actually one of the old receptionists at Metropolis who scheduled that meeting. And she really encouraged me to go in there and say, look, I think you have a future here. So I've set up this meeting for you. And I think it's really important that you go in and tell them what you think you can do. At least take the first step. So shout out to Kat. But I haven't seen her in ages now, but just that one meeting that she set up really helped. Yeah. But otherwise, I think I had emailed Metropolis beforehand as well, just sending them my CV. And it could be something as easy as, oh yeah, I think I remember seeing your CV in that email a couple of months ago. And would you mind bringing in like an updated copy? But you've got your foot in the door. They know who you are. And that's what's really important. So don't be shy, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, such good advice. And I think it's sometimes a scary thing to do, but you have to kind of just take that step and put yourself out there. Yeah. And like in situations like this as well, I guess sometimes there's a bit of the universe or whatever you want to call it of someone else sort of stepping in and doing something for you. Obviously, from your merit, because she saw something in you and she wouldn't have just said that otherwise for no reason. But a little bit of help can go a long way as well, which I guess the best way to kind of facilitate that is just, be nice to the people around you. And I think probably not enough can be said about that as well.
Definitely.
Awesome. One thing I guess maybe some people feel like when you are a runner, it's a sort of guarantee into the industry. Is that how you would see it, or not?
No, I wouldn't say it's a guarantee. But okay, let me phrase. Being a runner doesn't guarantee your spot as an assistant engineer one day, but it gives you the chance to prove yourself and to prove that you can do that job and that you are capable and that you can be an asset to the studio and that you're really helpful and that you just want to learn. And if people see that, it works to your advantage. And again, it's your skill coupled with, a little bit of someone on your side vouching for you and right timing. It all sort of has to come together, but it will. I truly believe that if you work really hard and you get along with people very easily and you know how to conduct yourself in a studio environment, then you'll go a very long way. It will all pay off.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I would say probably not only in a studio setting, but that probably applies to so many things in life in general.
Definitely.
Yeah. Keen to hear a bit more about sort of the experiences in the studio that you've managed to have so far. Is there one that's like the best experience ever that you were like, oh my God, I love my job and this is the best day?
I wouldn't say there was one particular day, but I did have fun sometimes when it was quiet in the building and I was just going on, all the studios were empty and it was 11 o'clock at night. And it's just me with my little toothbrush and my anti-static cleaner going around cleaning all the outboard gear, and I'm listening to a bit of music. And you kind of look around and you really get to take it in and think, I work in the biggest independent studio in Europe, and despite the fact that I'm cleaning outboard gear, it's pretty cool. And, you walk up, you take for granted sometimes you walk up and down the halls and you see those little plaques, Back to Black, Mastered at Metropolis, for example. I would walk past those every day and I wouldn't think much of it. But in those quiet moments, I'd really be able to appreciate where I was and how far I'd come. And those kinds of moments, when it hits you, kind of propels you to do even better, I'd say. Yeah. I think those were the best times.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's so beautiful. I mean, if the best moments of your job are with, a toothbrush sort of cleaning out beautiful gear and looking at how, the beautiful environment that you're in, then I think that's great, And what would you say has been sort of the scariest moment that you've had so far?
Lots of those. Anytime I would do something wrong or I didn't put something back properly, or sometimes I would leave with like the mic cupboard key, for example, and that was terrifying. I'd be on the bus home and then I'd look in my pocket and I'd be like, oh my God, I've left with the key. So I'd have to run back to work. Those moments, those are scary because, yeah, you have to be very thorough as well.
They don't have a spare?
I think people have their own, but it's just, I don't know. It's that internal fear. It's like, oh no, I wasn't supposed to go home with this.
And what happens? Like, if you do something wrong, like, what's the repercussion? Is it?
To be honest, I might just get like a scary email, but in my head, I just thought, I was so scared of maybe ruining my opportunity that it was kind of my own. It was all self-inflicted at the end of the day. But yeah, I think the worst thing I received was probably a scary email.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, fair enough. I think when you're kind of first rung on any ladder, anything like that can kind of feel a little bit like the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably when you look back on it after a few years, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, fair enough. I mean, it's so natural, I guess, and it's all out of you kind of wanting to do the best job and make the best impression. So
of course,
it's better than not caring.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Are there any sort of sink or swim moments where you were like, oh my God, now it's just me, or
Yeah, I think my one sink or swim moment was my very first session where I was asked to assist last minute. They couldn't find any assistants that were on hand. The session was coming in very late, and I had been freelance engineering before I had started as a runner, and funnily enough, I knew who the client was. And he came in. We sat there waiting for the engineer to come. And again, I'm meant to be assisting. It was my first time assisting. And then he just kind of looked at me like, I'm kind of ready to go. Can we do something, please? And again, I did an internal freak out. I was like, okay. So I had to quickly text my manager and say, look, I've hopped on, and I ended up engineering that session. But it was from that point on, that was when I had set up the meeting with my manager and said, she had said, I heard that you did this over the weekend. Maybe we can put you on some more sessions assisting. Yeah. Sink or swim.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. And have you developed some sort of mentors during your time there, and is there any sort of advice on building any of those relationships?
Oh, I think my goal since I was a runner was to build a rapport with the engineers at Metropolis, and I guess I would see them all as mentors in a way. They've taught me so much of what I know now, and not even just about Metropolis, but about how to handle myself in rooms with clients, how to, problem solve, troubleshoot quickly. It's just important to recognize how much value someone else that's been in the industry for a long time can offer you. And it's so valuable if you get along with them really well too. It's just always important to keep those connections. And I feel kind of guilty calling it a connection, because at the end of the day, I look up to these people and they were vital to my learning at the end of the day. So it's important to kind of keep them close. Another thing that I thought people didn't really like, but now I realize they do, is when you email someone that has mentored you in the past and said, hey, look at what I'm doing now. You really helped me come into my own and do this. So I just wanted to say thank you, and would love to grab a coffee sometime if you're free, and we can talk about, the good old days or stuff like that. It's just good to always look back and reach out again, because you never really know what that person is doing. Maybe they can help you in your next step, for example. So just keep your connections close.
I think it makes so much sense. And even if you sort of put yourself in a mentor's shoes, you know, it's always nice to hear that you've had an impact on someone and that what you've done has helped someone in their journey. So I think, it sounds like a lovely thing to just acknowledge that someone's kind of just helped you get to where you are today. So good to know. And I think it's a good thing to mention as well, because sometimes you forget, I guess. You know how much impact someone's had on you, and maybe you just assume that they know as well.
Yeah.
But it's always nice to kind of acknowledge it. Yeah, no, love it. So do you have any top tips, Ramera, for anyone starting their career in the industry?
Top tips. Never do anything half-heartedly.
Okay.
Be humble, but know your worth. Again, there's a lot of people in the industry that probably know more than me, but and who I can learn from. But especially when talking to a big studio or looking for other job opportunities, it's important to showcase everything that you can do and really let them know how you can be valuable to them. You know, it's important to have all of these skills in your arsenal, but also think of something that might set you apart and capitalize on that a little bit. Yeah, I think just it's one of the key things that I don't think I see enough is people putting their foot forward and asking for things. At the end of the day, the worst thing that can happen is they say no. That's it.
Yeah. So true, so true. And that's the thing, is that when you put things in context like that, I think sometimes it might sound like a pessimistic view, but sometimes it's useful to think, what is the absolute worst scenario? Because I think we immediately put it in like, oh no, I'm literally going to die if this happens. But then you're like, actually, let's just come back a step and think, you know, what are the real ramifications? And and often it's not that bad.
Definitely.
And the upside is huge.
100%.
So yeah, that's great. And the be humble but know your worth, that's really great advice, Ramera. So thank you for that. And yeah, that's been great. And it's been really nice hearing about, you know, the ins and outs of a studio and kind of the job of a runner too. It just seems like such a sort of integral part of the studio and the smooth kind of running of it. Yeah. We have a couple of questions for you from our audience. So we have one from Diary. So Diary asks, how did you get in touch with the big studio? So I guess you've sort of covered this a little bit, and maybe even with the job in Spotify, because it seems like that was sort of your inroad. How did that come about?
They put out a listing for a female engineer and I applied. But I again, it was something I didn't really think a lot of at the time. And I feel like that probably doesn't answer or is not as helpful as it should be. But I guess what I can say is I was applying for 20, 30 things at once. You know, I was really trying to get my foot in the door somewhere. And so I was applying for all of those little contests. I was looking on Instagram, all of the little competitions and things that those kind of production organizations would have. And just in the hopes of getting my name on something. And all you really need is that one interview. So, you know, you throw out all of these things into the water and something will catch, really.
That's great.
I hope
great.
that's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think it is. Because I think the story from that, what you're saying, is just to kind of keep your eyes and ears open and just go for everything and something will kind of work. Because maybe if you narrow it down to only one way that you are going to go for something, that might not really be the right thing.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Cool. Thank you. And we have another question from Freya. So Freya asked, how can you prepare for working in a studio environment?
I think the thing that helped me most, that prepped me most for working in a studio environment, was when I was in engineering school. And we had a little studio that the school had just for the students. And we'd run sessions with bands and artists from outside that we would bring in. and it really just simulated a recording studio environment. And I think that helped prepare me loads. And being a runner, I think understanding how a recording session works really is the best thing to prepare you. Nothing really prepares you until you're in the room and you're having to respond, because obviously a lot of it is person oriented. You're catering to the needs of creative people, both as a runner, as an assistant, and as an engineer. So it really depends on where you are, what you're recording, who you're going to be with. But I guess being able to take on whatever is being thrown at you is such an important skill to have in the studio environment. So maybe something along those lines.
Yeah. So I guess that brings us to the end, Ramera. But thank you so much for your time. It's been really lovely getting an insight of how things work in a studio. So what's on for the rest of your day?
Oh gosh, you know what? I've not had a day off like this in a while, so I think I might go down to the shops. I might see what's going on. I might just take a break from being in the house and being around recording equipment for a day.
Okay. So after this podcast recording, you will take a break.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh no, good. I'm glad you've got your day off to yourself. So please make the most of it, and a pleasure chatting to you. So have a good rest of your day.
And you too. Thanks so much.